The officials arrive on a Tuesday. No soldiers, no weapons, just two men in clean robes carrying scrolls and a measuring rod. They set up a table in the village square and call for all children between 6 and 12 to line up. Your mother pushes you forward. You don't know why. They measure your height against marks on the rod, check your teeth, ask you to repeat a phrase in Persian. You stumble through it. They nod, mark something on the scroll, and move to the next child. 3 hours later, they read 4 names aloud. Yours is third. In the records, this counts as an upgrade, from local problem to Imperial asset. This didn't start today. It started with a failed grain tax, a provincial labour quota, and an empire that decided it needed children who could be taught to forget. This isn't cruelty, it's administration. The Persian Empire runs on data. Every satrap reports to the king's officials. Population counts, grain yields, military-age males, and children who meet specific criteria. Healthy, compliant, young enough to be reshaped. Your family didn't volunteer you. The empire identified a shortfall in palace attendants and scribes, cross-referenced it with provincial census data, and filled the gap with children who fit the profile. You weren't special. You were available. The alternative to compliance isn't punishment. It's being marked as administratively difficult. That notation follows your family, makes the next tax season harder, ensures the next census is less forgiving. The night before the officials return, your house doesn't sleep. Your mother washes your hands again and again, as if cleanliness might matter tomorrow. Your father counts the grain jars, even though the number won't change. Adults speak in low voices you're not meant to hear. When you ask what's wrong, no one answers. You were told to wear your best clothes in the morning. Not because it's a celebration, because appearances matter when records are being made. Before dawn, your mother fixes your hair and straightens your tunic. She tells you to stand still, to listen, to do what you're told. It feels like advice. It's preparation. The intake process is efficient. You're measured again, this time by a physician who checks for disease, deformity, signs of poor nutrition. You pass. They test your comprehension, hold up objects, ask you to name them. You do. They note your age, build, and whether you cry when separated from your mother. You don't. Not because you're brave, because you're too confused to understand what's happening. You're entered into the records under a reference designation. Your name is written down, but it's already becoming a footnote. The officials use a shorter, easier version when they call you. By tomorrow, that's the only one that will matter. Your parents are told this is an honor, that you will serve the great king and receive an education. Your mother signs a document she can't read, while your father watches from the edge of the square, hands at his sides. They don't mention you won't come back. They don't have to. You're walked to a wagon with 6 other children. None of you speak. The wagon pulls away. Your village gets smaller. Then it's gone. You tell yourself they'll visit. They won't. The roads don't run that way anymore. The journey to the capital takes 3 weeks. You sleep on straw, eat twice a day. The officials traveling with you aren't cruel. They're just indifferent. You're cargo. Valuable cargo, but cargo. By the time you see the walls of Persepolis rising in the distance, you've stopped asking when you'll go home. Not because you've accepted it, because no one answers anymore. Within 3 days, you're given a new name. It's short, Persian, easy for administrators to pronounce. Your old name isn't forbidden. It's just never used again. After a month, you stop thinking in it. After 2 months, you forget how your mother said it. Language training is forced immersion. You're paired with children from distant provinces who don't share your dialect. Your only common ground is Persian. Mistakes aren't punished with violence. Access to meals, Lessons and rest is quietly delayed until you demonstrate compliance. You learn quickly that the fastest way to eat is to stop making errors. The fastest way to sleep is to stop asking questions in your old tongue. At first, the delays feel accidental. A meal that comes late, a lesson you're told to wait outside for, a mat that isn't unrolled for you at night. No one explains why. Then you notice the pattern. Children who pronounce the words correctly eat first. Children who hesitate, wait. Children who whisper in their old language don't get corrected. They simply don't get called forward. One boy beside you stops speaking altogether. He moves his lips during drills, but makes no sound. When an instructor praises him for his posture, you feel something sharp in your chest. Not relief, envy. That's when you understand the lesson. Food is not food. Rest is not rest. They're signals. And the fastest way to receive them is to become predictable. The curriculum is practical. You're not educated to question, you're educated to function. Depending on your build and how quickly you adapt, you're tracked into one of several paths. Scribes, attendants, military auxiliaries, palace logistics. A small number of children are redirected into specialized roles no one explains in detail. Attendant training means posture and silence. You learn to read a room without being noticed and carry messages you'll never be allowed to read. You become present, but invisible. The instructors don't need to be cruel. If you fail, they simply stop seeing you. They demonstrate once, correct you twice. After that, you are no longer a person to them. You are a logistical error. If you don't improve, you're reassigned to labor crews. No one wants that. You learn that the Empire doesn't need your loyalty. It needs your competence. Loyalty is what happens when competence becomes habit. You stop wondering if this is right. You start wondering if you're doing it correctly. The reward system is simple. Children who adapt quickly receive better food, warmer quarters, praise from instructors, access to bathhouses. Small privileges that feel enormous when you've spent weeks sleeping on stone. You begin to compete with the other children. Not because you hate them, because compliance starts to feel like winning. You're not trying to survive anymore. You're trying to excel. The Empire doesn't break you with fear. It breaks you with incremental comfort. 6 months in, you see them, the older children. They wear fine clothes, speak 3 languages, and command respect from freeborn Persians who outrank them by birth, but not by function. You watch one of them, maybe 17, maybe 20, walk through the courtyard with a dispatch case. Officials step aside for him. He doesn't acknowledge them. He doesn't need to. You realize something that sits in your chest like a stone. If you survive this, you could become someone important. Just not someone who remembers where they came from. The Empire didn't steal your future. It offered you a better one and made you forget the price. Quick question, don't overthink it. If you were standing here now with food, safety, and a future offered, would you stay and become useful, or go and keep the life you came from? Type stay or go in the comments. 3 years pass. You no longer flinch when someone uses your new name. You no longer dream in your first language. When you close your eyes, you don't see your village. You see the palace corridors, the records rooms, the places you're supposed to be. You've become useful. You're assigned to assist with the next intake. A new group of children arrives from a recently annexed region. Tribute, quota fulfillment, administrative necessity. You watch them line up in the courtyard. They look exactly like you did. Confused, quiet, trying not to cry. The officials measure them, test them, record their names. One of them, a girl, maybe 7, asks you a question. She speaks a language you recognize, not yours, but close enough. You understood her. You answer in Persian because that's what you're supposed to do. The system doesn't correct hesitation. It rewards resolution. You realize something in that moment. You've become the system, not a victim of it, not a prisoner, a component, a functioning part of the machine that took you and is now taking her. You didn't choose this, but you didn't refuse it either. At some point, maybe 6 months in, maybe a year, you stopped resisting and started optimizing. You didn't choose loyalty to the Empire, you chose survival. Loyalty was just the word they used for it. The Empire never asked you to love it. It asked you to function within it, and you do. If you could go back, would you refuse the selection and stay in your village, or would you take the deal again, knowing what it costs? You don't know, and that's the part that keeps you awake. The new children are processed over the next week. You help with intake documentation. You demonstrate proper posture. You correct their Persian pronunciation. You do it efficiently, without hesitation. One of the instructors commends you, says you'll make an excellent senior attendant, maybe even a junior administrator. You thank him, because that's what you're supposed to do. The children you help process today will do the same to others in 3 years. The cycle continues. The Empire expands. The quotas are filled. The system runs. The Empire doesn't need to conquer through violence when it can conquer through opportunity. It doesn't need chains when it has education, status, and safety. It doesn't need to force loyalty when it can cultivate dependence. You're not a victim anymore. You're a participant. And that's the part they never put in the records. The Persian Empire didn't need chains. It used education, safety, and status to turn children into loyal instruments who forgot they'd ever been anything else. You weren't broken by force. You were improved until you no longer belonged to yourself. The Empire didn't need to break you when it could simply replace you. The next story is already waiting, and the records are never wrong.